like to call to order the meeting of the Wilson School Board for Tuesday, February 19th, 2019. Can I have roll call, please?
Pace. Here. Mr. Ehrlich. Here. Mr. Hart. Mr. Hopp. Here. Dr. Kennedy. Mrs. Cocker. Here. Mr. Martin. Here. Mr. Negrini. Here. Mr. Wolf.
Here.
That's 8 present, 1 absent.
Okay. Will we all rise while our JROTC posts our colors? Mr. Maravich.
Two opportunities for the public to address the board. One is on agenda items, which is immediately before the agenda. Second is on non-agenda items, which is at any end of the meeting. Pursuant to board policy and the Sunshine Law, it is a 3-minute opportunity to provide the board with matters that are or may come before it.
All right, next up, we have Mr. Campbell here to tell us about a pretty unbelievable accomplishment of one of our students. Thank you.
Krishna, like many thousands of other high school juniors, took the ACT college admissions test. However, unlike many of her peers, her composite score, a perfect score of 36, places her in elite company. To put this in perspective, this score is achieved by less than 0.2% of all ACT test takers annually. Krishna, on behalf of the Wilson High School administration and all of your teachers, congratulations. We are all proud of you and wish you the very best for your continued academic success.
Great job. Amazing. There's a little something to remember the occasion. Have it? Okay. Shoo. Thank goodness. Fantastic. Great job. Just an announcement that the board did hold executive session before tonight's meeting to discuss a personnel issue. Moving on to approval of minutes. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting from February 4th, 2019. Mr. Martin, thank you. Mr. Ehrlich, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Treasurer's report. Mr. Martin.
President, I submit for approval tonight the Treasury report, the investment report, the general fund report, and the financial reports as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mrs. Cocker. Roll call, please.
Hopp? Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Payment of bills, Mr. Martin.
Approval of payment and bills from the general fund of $2,868,354.53, and now the capital reserve fund $95,555.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Mr. Ehrlich, thank you. Roll call, please.
Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Case? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. And our financial reports, Mr. Martin.
For January, as presented, the cafeteria report, the child care, Southern Middle School report, Wilson West Middle School, and the senior high.
Thank you. Second for that one. Mr. Ehrlich, thank you. Roll call, please.
Hopp? Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Case? Mr. Ehrlich? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, President.
Dr. Frabley.
Tonight I present the personnel and program recommendations as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for 6-1 through 6-7? Mr. Hopp, thank you. Second, Mr. Ehrlich. Roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Case? Mr. Ehrlich? Mr. Hopp? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Moving on to consent items. Under 8.1 donations, looking for a motion to accept with gratitude from Patient First to Spring Ridge Elementary School a check for $1,000 to be used to purchase Generation Genius for K-5, an online program, and book club books for 4th and 5th grade students. Do I have a motion for that? Thank you, Mrs. Cocker. Mr. Case, second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Under Human Resources, looking for a motion to request approval of a new support staff position under Transportation Dispatcher with the job description attached. The position would be in the range 3 of the support staff compensation plan. And also a motion to approve the bonuses for the Keystone Stars grants as presented. I have a motion for those two. Mr. Ehrlich, thank you. Mrs. Cocker, second. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Case? Mr. Ehrlich? Mr. Hopp? Dr. Kennedy? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. 10.1 under Pupil Services, looking for a motion to approve the contract with New Story to provide education for one special education student at a cost of $380 per day for the 2018-2019 school year beginning 1/14/2019 through June 6, 2019. Also looking for approval for permission to enter into a contract with the Wyomissing Area School District for 2 special education students. The Wyomissing School District will pay tuition for these students to attend Wilson School District for the remainder of the 2018-2019 school year for $65,000. And finally, looking for a motion to approve Monday, June 10th through Friday, June 14th, 2019, which is no school for students as Professional Development Act 80 days. Do I have a motion for 10-1 through? Yep. Let's do. You want to do the motion first, and then let's do it first. Thank you, Mr. Hopp. Second, Mr. Ehrlich. Discussion.
And I didn't like it last year when we just stopped going to school and when we had snow days, and I don't like it this year either. I think we should send the kids to go to school as long as we can, because as long as they're learning, the more they're reading, the more they're learning. I mean, I think it's nice that the teachers are going to have in-service days, but I think the kids need to go to school and they need to make the days up that we're missing.
Anyone else?
Slightly different. I think there's different philosophies. One might be, one can disagree on the importance of standardized testing, but we all have to acknowledge that there are legal requirements and testing promulgated by Pennsylvania Department of Education that all of our students have to take and pass or get remediation. So to me, in the future, I know we've already approved our calendar. I would suggest the opposite, that we make up more days earlier prior to standardized testing to better prepare for the tests that we're required to take. Whether we agree with them or not, we're still required to take. And I think, I'm no teacher, never have been a teacher, so I'll defer to teachers in the classroom, but I've always heard that post-Memorial Day, the learning environment is not the best. So, but again, that's just hearsay.
The point is, especially for the younger students, and I'm talking even the youngest of the young, and our most at-risk students need to be in that learning environment, and it's the teacher's responsibility, whether it's May 31st, June 1st, June 10th, or June 26th. It's the teacher's responsibility to keep that an active learning environment. And when we let these kids go earlier, for many, and especially for the at-risk kids, that learning stops. And the earlier the learning stops, the worse the summer slide gets. And the summer slide has been getting worse and worse since the standardized testing has started, because it's almost like when the tests are over, then school's over. And that's the learning environment we've created. And we are perpetuating this learning environment by saying, oh, well, we don't need those 4 days in June, where those are 4 more days where those kids are reading where they might not be.
I mean, my response to that would be, I would be more in favor, and I'm not suggesting this, so don't think I am. I'd say take the days before, March and so on, and do that. I'm not motioning, so don't worry about it. But to me, that would be more productive. For example, you can have parents and families that conscientiously, like I did. My oldest daughter, who's a sophomore in college, we started a family tradition with her that all of our kids we'll do a graduation trip somewhere. And I tried to be conscientious to do it as early as possible in the summer to not affect my other kids' extracurricular stuff and not affect her orientation. But, tried to create a buffer between, all right, I'm not going to, the first day after school was supposed to end, I'm not going to plan vacation. But if I wait a week thinking I'm being responsible and then we just keep adding and adding, that's a problem.
Those at-risk kids aren't going on vacation. I'm talking about the at-risk kids, the kids that we have, you've talked about it. We have those lower income kids that get the free and reduced lunch, but we're up to 32% now. Those kiddos are not going to anywhere on that week. And those are the kids that we need to be in school. We're a different school now than we were 20 years ago, where 20 years ago, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. I would agree with you 100%, let the families go on vacation. But we have to look now that we have a different population, and that population needs to be with us as long as possible.
Well, I mean, I'd be the first to support looking into a program that Wilson funds for identifying at-risk students to have more, IEP aside, to have at-risk students have additional summer support. I mean, I'd be the first to make that motion, subject to it being properly vetted, and I think that's a way to address that issue. So, if as the curriculum committee wants to look into that, I'd endorse
Is the
it.
finance committee going to give us some cash for that?
I mean, can you put these days anywhere, or is it specifically it has to be in this time slot? Like, we missed an opportunity, I would imagine, yesterday to make up a day. I mean, is it all about that, or is it, do you have to get these days in one way or another, or is this for more timing? Trying to understand that.
Dr. Kennedy, just curious, have you seen any models of programs that are out there for teachers to present to these kids that are before they leave for summer break that that need the extra help? Is there anything out there that we can look into?
Well, one of the biggest, actually, Dr. Flannery and I, we were talking about one of the best ones that I've seen in our area actually works with our graduate reading program, where there's a 6-week span of time where they work with one-on-one with reading specialists in the area. The problem is we have to get more people, more teachers to go into our Wilson cohort. If we could get that going, then that could be something that we would offer to students, and it would be free.
Yeah, I was even thinking maybe with some of your college students, is there an opportunity to get some of them involved?
The biggest thing that we've found are the districts that offer busing to events, busing to because of parents working, and even with the Sinking Spring Playground program, it's getting the kids to the site and getting home the kids from the site. So even as it's not as much as getting the people there, the teachers there, it's getting the children to the and back.
Right.
Because the other thing is parents don't want to pay for childcare and then have their kid miss half a day of childcare to go to a tutoring program.
Right.
Dr. Kennedy was an excellent point that of the summer slide, and I think we just need to have the will to address the issue. I mean, if it's busing, if it's finding teachers, we have to come up with a plan, a strategy, and implement it, because I think it's extremely important, especially at the primary grade level, to get these kids that are at risk as much help as we reasonably can. And something like that, I mean, it's a lot cheaper in the long run to address those issues ourselves than potentially through IEPs and due process later on. And plus, it's the right thing to do. So, I mean, I would wholly endorse if the curriculum committee looked into something like that, and then speak with finance to come up with a budget.
Are we okay doing these three together? Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second for 10.1 and 10.2. We'll just do that. Can we have roll call for those two, please?
Mr. Ehrlich? Mr. Hop? Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
8-4, 0 against.
Okay, and then the motion we had is okay, Mr. Moravich, right? We had him. Okay, so let's do another motion for 10.3. Somebody would, Mr. Hop, Mrs. Cocker, second. Roll call for that.
Mr. Case? Yes. Mr. Ehrlich? Yes. Mr. Hop? Yes. Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Yes. Mr. Martin? Yes. Mr. Negrini? Yes. Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
That's 7-4, 1 against.
Thank you. Move 12.1, looking for a motion to approve Reading United to use the Wilson School District facility as presented, which is the Gursky Stadium at a rate of $500 per usage. So I have a motion for that. Mr. Ehrlich, thank you. Second, Mrs. Cocker, thank you. Roll call, please. Any discussion? No, it's, I think it's about 7, yeah. Yeah, and just as a reminder, this was an agreement that we came to in which they let any Wilson resident students into the game for free in exchange for a reduced rate to use our facility. They're evening, yeah, usually 6, 7 o'clock, something like that. Anything else?
Are they going to sell food at the game?
I don't remember if concessions are open. I don't know if they've, I think they do, yeah.
I was going to say, wouldn't it be interesting if we could get our sports, like our football boosters, our band boosters, our soccer boosters, to sell at the game?
It would be nice. It's, they don't get, compared to like a football game,
Oh, they don't get
they
people?
don't get enough people to really make it worthwhile, to be
I
honest with you.
imagined a lot of people there.
Yeah. Yeah, I did just mention that it's a reduced rate because of the agreement that we came to with them.
Standard rate is $750.
Yeah. Anything else? All right, we have a first and second, so roll call, please.
Mr. Negrini? Mr. Case? Mr. Ehrlich? Mr. Hop? Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Wolf? That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Under Finance, motion to approve the 2019-2020 BCIU mandated services budget as presented. 13.2, a motion to approve the budget transfers dated January 16th, 2019 through February 13th, 2019 as presented. I have a motion for those two. Mr. Negrini, Mr. Ehrlich, second, thank you. Roll call, please, or any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Case? Yes. Mr. Ehrlich? Yes. Mr. Hop? Yes. Dr. Kennedy? Yes. Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Yes. Mr. Negrini? Yes. Mr. Wolf? Yes. That's 8-4, 0 against.
14.1, looking for a motion to approve the contract with author Elizabeth Acevedo as presented. And 14.2, motion to approve the 2019 summer school brochures as attached. Do I have a motion for those two? Dr. Kennedy, thank you. Mr. Case, second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hop? Dr. Kennedy? Mrs. Cocker? Mr. Martin? Mr. Negrini? Mr. Case? Mr. Wolf?
Thank you. Under Transportation, 15.1, looking for a motion to approve a transportation contract with BCIU pending solicitor review and approval. And 15.2, request approval of an agreement with Bright Bill Body Works Incorporated as presented. I have a motion for those two. Mr. Ehrlich, thank you. Second, Mr. Negrini, thank you. Any discussion?
A long-term plan, or is there a plan to hire a second mechanic at some point?
There is a plan to hire a second mechanic.
Okay.
Yes.
Stopgap.
Stopgap
Okay.
measure.
Just wanted to make.
In the interim, in case we have any issues.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Pop. Dr. Kennedy. Mrs. Cocker. Mr. Martin. Mr. Negrini. Mr. Case. Mr. Ehrlich. Mr. Wolf. That's 8-4, 0 against.
Thank you. Under policies, our policy committee still cranking these out every other Monday or every Monday. Thank you for your work. Looking for a motion to approve the final reading and adoption of policies 222, 223, 226, and 234 as presented. Do I have a motion for those? Mrs. Cocker, thank you. Second. Mr. Case, thank you. Roll call.
Mrs. Cocker. Mr. Martin. Mr. Negrini. Mr. Case. Mr. Ehrlich. Mr. Hop. Dr. Kennedy. Mr. Wolf. That's 8-4, 0 against.
Didn't realize I could have done 19.2 as well. So 19.2, looking for a motion to accept the repeal of policy 236 and 240 as presented. I have a motion for that. Mrs. Cocker, thank you. Mr. Case, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy. Mrs. Cocker. Mr. Martin. Mr. Negrini. Mr. Case. Mr. Ehrlich. Mr. Hop. Mr. Wolf. That's 8-4, 0 against.
Then we also have a second reading of policy 204, 227, 233, and 235, and a first reading of 239, 249, 250, and 251. So no votes on those. Moving on to committee reports. BCTC, Mr. Case.
BCTC has not met since our last board meeting, and the next meeting for BCTC is on February 27th at the West Campus.
Thank you. BCIU and curriculum, Dr. Kennedy.
The curriculum committee nor the BCIU has met since last we had time we had a board meeting. The curriculum committee did not meet today, despite the fact that my phone told me 4,000 times today that it told me we met. Like, it even said, do you want to call in since you're not going to the meeting? We did not meet today, though. We are meeting next month in March, and the BCIU is meeting on Thursday at 7 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. Berks EIT, Mrs. Schlashman, anything? Nothing? Okay. Under extracurricular, most of our winter sports are wrapping up. With Mr. Russo here, do you want to give us any highlights from the CPL swim?
Well, before the meet, Wilson led all of the Berks County teams in karaoke to songs from Mamma Mia. That seems pretty athletic. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, but besides that, it was just a really fun meet, and Wilson dominated in so many of the events. I think in the girls' breaststroke, places 1 through 8 were all Wilson girls. So
That's awesome.
Every spot on the podium was pretty impressive.
That's great. I saw some of those pictures. It looked very impressive. Thank you. The only other thing out of just to mention something coming to kind of give everybody a heads up, we've been having a continual problem with parking during evening athletic events, especially if we would have, for example, a basketball game at the gym and something going on at the natatorium, to the point where people are parking in handicapped and spots that are spaced off and striped off for a reason, for safety purposes. And it actually led to a situation where, we almost had a problem. So they're going to see some signage put up in the near future. I believe facilities is probably talking about that. We'll see some signage. Give everybody kind of fair warning, but we will start to ticket in the future when you're at athletic events if you're parked someplace where you're not supposed to. We have to get that a little bit more under control. Facilities, Mr. Negrini.
A meeting on Thursday had a number of items that we had discussed. We had discussed and recommended the purchase of a handicap ramp that would be mobile. There's a child at Whitfield that was not able to access the stage because of a wheelchair. So rather than make some changes there for a cost of $8,100, there will be a mobile handicap ramp that will be able to be utilized at every building within the district so that this issue is not problematic in the future. There was information provided regarding the Van Reed Road crossing in between Dwight and Burke's Place, the parking lot of St. Ignatius, that was brought to the district's attention that there was concerns that the ramps there at that crosswalk were not handicap accessible. Upon contact with PennDOT, it was determined by PennDOT that that crossing is in fact illegal. So notice was being sent out to members of the district that that particular crosswalk will no longer be utilized, that they need to make sure that they're utilizing the walk at Dwight or at Burke's Place, and the crossing guard that was working at that particular location will be reassigned.
Mr. Negrini, I find it just incredibly frustrating. A situation where someone is seeking handicap access for a crosswalk that has been there for probably 50 plus years, and then actually reaches out and says, hey, can you help me out? And the response they get is no, and actually we're going to tell you you can't even use that anymore because it's not technically allowed. So now you have to go further in either direction. I think it's a shame, some of these bureaucratic policies that take place. It's just a lack of common sense. Absolutely.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
I agree. When I first read the note that came, I believe, in our update, I was trying to think of how long has that been there. People have used that crosswalk. We've had a crossing guard there for as long as I can remember. You've lived in the district longer, but I'm thinking typical of PennDOT. So where were they all these years when that has? How many times has that been painted over the years, and how many times has somebody driven, a PennDOT employee or whatever, driven by that, and nothing ever happens until somebody makes contact and, as you said, say, well, yeah, by the way, it's not legal. Where were you for the last 50 years or however long it's been? I was shocked when I saw that. And I can't remember, are we reaching out to any of our representatives to assist with this? I believe you said you were, or?
Our representative was actually at the meeting where we held to discuss the crosswalk and the handicap access that we were requesting, the community was requesting. So Mr. Cox was present.
On the completion of the district-wide feasibility study. We're hoping by the end of this school year so that we can then fully report back to the board what possibilities are being recommended as a result of that feasibility study. Projects to be completed before the end of the school year: the decommission of 5 underground heating oil tanks that are at different locations throughout the district. By the decommission of those tanks and selling off of the oil that's currently contained in those tanks that are no longer being utilized by the district, not only will we see a savings of $5,000 in insurance premiums based upon having those particular tanks on district grounds, but obviously from whatever proceeds from the sale of the oil, which I believe the rate is about 35 cents a gallon. Replacement of playground railroad ties at some of the elementary buildings. Replacement of the generator at Lower Heidelberg. A roof replacement at the lower house of the high school that is in imminent need of replacement at this point, so we have certainly accelerated some of the work that had been projected out a few years down the road to this particular year. replacement of a high school gym coil, and perhaps by the end of the winter season, asphalt replacement at the upper and lower house parking lot. It's become quite the pothole haven driving in and out there. We discussed the 5-year spending plan of capital projects. Again, that's certainly subject to change from year to year, but what seems to be the biggest items are roof replacements at Southern Middle School and at the upper house of the high school. By doing such within the next year or two, that will put us out, I believe, to 2035 with warranties of all of our roofs in the district. So in the past, there has been what we believe to be a good utilization of some patchwork, but it's gotten to the point now with those particular roofs that those no longer can be patched and needs to be replaced. We discussed with the natatorium making certain for some of the larger events that we are not exceeding the capacity for spectators, as that certainly puts us in a potential violation with the fire marshal. There was discussions about the purchase of 5 sheds to maintain snow blowers and gas cans at a cost of $5,300. Some of those items were being stored in locations that probably are not conducive to people coming in and out of other buildings. There was also discussion about purchase of 3 new mowers, a trailer for the mowers, and 2 walk-behind mowers, as well as replacement of dated equipment. Last year we did see, as a result of either outdated equipment or not enough equipment and the heavy rains that we had, that the grounds throughout the district certainly became problematic in terms of maintaining the grass cutting. So that is being recommended so that that situation does not repeat itself this spring and summer. So that is what we discussed at our last meeting. There is right now the discussion of a joint facilities and finance meeting. We're looking at a date of March 11th as one of the items that will be discussed at that particular meeting is the concept that has been discussed in the past of relocating varsity baseball back to the high school campus, and what that would entail in terms of costs and the options available for those particular costs, and then ultimately, if would be recommended, how to go about potentially paying for that relocation and upgrade. So I'm putting that out there now to the entire board. If you'd like to be part of that workshop, it's being looked at as a workshop, not necessarily a public board meeting, just to be informative to everybody, so that based upon a recommendation of facilities and or finance, the board can be well informed on making that decision in the future.
The 11th, he said?
March 11th. We're tentatively looking at that date. We need to make sure that, you know, at least the committee members are available, and then we'll put it out there to the rest of the board, and then certainly, you know, advertise it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ehrlich, Finance.
The Finance Committee met late this afternoon, covered a lot of ground. During this time, we first of all went over the food services, as we have been on a regular basis, looking at some of the progress we've made, some of the areas that we still have a long way to go, but I think overall we're making some progress there. Not only looking at food and those types of things, but also looking at the layout of some of the food service areas that are creating some issues, which have been been known for quite some time in some of the areas that need some improvement. And I believe Mr. Simcox is going out next week to look at one area that needs some attention. So covered a lot of ground on the food service area. We also discussed the general obligation note 2017, the Series B, and just to refresh everybody's memory on this, this is where we had borrowed some money. We didn't draw it all down. We do need to draw the rest of that down by the end of this month. So we will draw that money down by the end of this month, and that money then needs to be allocated and used. So we are working on that, and we'll have a recommendation for the board. As Mr. Negrini said, we are looking at a joint meeting of the Finance Committee and Facilities Committee. One of the areas that we're looking at, as he mentioned, is the lower house roof is at a point where it needs to be replaced, as well as some of the other roofs. So that's potentially a thought there to use some of those funds, but we will have a recommendation. We also discussed other capital needs in addition to the roof at the lower house, some other needs, and as Mr. Negrini had mentioned, with the baseball fields and some other things, looking at some financing options for how best to finance that. We're currently in a pretty good rate environment, and in having on a conference call some of our consultants that have helped us in the past with some of these things, we will be discussing some financing options on how to best pay for these things while keeping our debt service in line with where we currently are, and trying to balance that with the facility study that is being done, and how to time our borrowing is best into that, and also folding that into, we discussed the preliminary working budget and starting to work on that as far as where we're at. So we have these needs, and some of the things that are coming up, which we knew are some of the contractual obligations that the district now has, and we need to look at our unassigned fund balances to keep those all in line. So we're kind of balancing a lot of things there with the financing, facilities, contractual obligations that the district has to keep the district in good financial stead as has been in the past. So trying to balance a lot of things, and I think hopefully we'll get some things worked out. And as Mr. Negrini said, we just thought to try to move things along and not delay things. The best thing is to have a joint facilities and finance meeting, which we've done in the past. Would not be out of the norm. We've done that a number of times when we felt that it is imperative, because I know one of the things with some of these projects, if we are going to move forward, that we'd want to start as soon as school's over. So we can't keep pushing some of these decisions off. If we push them off too long, then Mr. Simcox is going to be pulling his hair out. So I think we got a good plan, and as we said, we'll let you know the dates. And it's, as Jay said, we're looking at a working meeting to try to work some things. But we've got some preliminary numbers already on some of the debt service, and we have some debt rolling off, which was planned. So the timing is actually pretty good for doing some of these things. That concludes my report.
Great. Anything from HR with Mr. Hart not being here?
No report.
Okay. Legislative, Mr. Martin.
Not a lot going on. The governor presented his budget, showed some increase in spending for education. It's not all that great for Wilson. I just found out today, Christine mentioned we'll give out maybe $500,000 out of this proposed budget, which more of it is going to the center schools where they need it. Wilson obviously is considered not a wealthy, but a better off district, so the funding is not going to be that great. But there is some discussion about trying to come up with different ways of saving money as usual. And this kind of relates to my past conversations on pensions. Well, the attorney, I forget, I always get this messed up, his name. Eugene DePasquale, I can't pronounce his name. Well, anyway, he was, drew a parallel between some of the municipalities now that are experiencing financial difficulties, and they've been shutting down fire companies and, you know, some limiting or eliminating the police forces. So, a great idea, I don't think it's a great idea, but I'm just being facetious here, but they said we're going to start taxing these jurisdictions because they're using state police. So that's going to raise $106 million for the state police to help offset their budget. So, but nobody addresses the problem is the pensions. And it's, you know, it just, to me, we talked about this for how many years about pension control and expenses. So they come up with a way of taxing the people already in a distressed municipality, $106 more per person, to pay for something that should already be taken care of in the budget. So I just find this amusing how they kind of shift stuff around, and there's just no solution to this at this point, because our pension, I found out also from Christine, you know, our pension contributions keep climbing each year, and we haven't even reached the top yet. So it's a burden on school districts, which I'm getting back to, is a burden on school districts. It takes a lot of money away from true educational purposes. And to me, that's where we're getting increases all the time. It's not all getting into education. That's it.
And that peak could get moved down the road should the stock market.
Oh yeah,
take
it's very volatile. Yes.
The Finance Committee meeting, and Ms. Schlossman did a nice job of doing some quick analysis. The number that you hear in the news that the school district is getting in terms of Governor Wolf's budget isn't really what the school district is getting. It's far less than that when you kind of cut out the smoke and mirrors. So what you might read in the news is a district like Wilson's getting, we're not getting anywhere close to. Just the way it makes it look like, you know, in different line items you're getting more, but then it gets taken away in another line item. So, Christine, the total figure was 400 and some, was only about 400 some thousand, but the number reported in the news was closer to $1 million. It was 900 and some thousand. So it's basically it's less than half of what is actually being reported.
And we get caught up on the big numbers when we see $3.3 billion that is being contributed to education, and that sounds fantastic. And then you take a look at what percentage of state money covers our budget, and it's 24%. So, you know, Harrisburg wants to give itself a big pat on the back about, you know, supporting public education, when in reality, it's our local taxpayers that are in fact really carrying the burden of educating people here in the Wilson School District, as it is in most of the districts throughout the Commonwealth. So, you know, again, if we're really talking about properly funding public education, they're still way behind in doing that.
Pennsylvania, as a state, funding is about 38th in the nation. When you combine, however, it drops to we're in the top 10 of funding education because of all our local taxes. So we're doing very well in funding education, but it's not coming from the state.
Because what percentage of the state contributes to pension?
Half.
The percentage of the total cost?
We match it, we share it.
No, it's not, they don't contribute 50%.
Christine? 50%.
They do?
Of course, it's unfunded, it's not funded.
Yeah.
It's unfunded. Right now, it's $84 billion. Unfunded.
Numbers. You know, they have made some changes with Act 5 in January, right? Where it's more
your
aligned.
children may benefit from that.
They are making changes to make this better in the future. I mean, teachers are grandfathered in, and new teachers starting post-January will be
July
more
1st.
aligned towards the market and not be pension-based as much, correct?
But
That's
it's not going to change our contribution, it's not going to change our contribution level.
No, it
And the
doesn't.
choices that they
In
have
the short term,
are,
no, but in the long term, I would imagine that as teachers retire and new teachers come on board, the pension will get better at some point, right? It's going to flatline at some point.
That's the million-dollar question, because my understanding, we
But you
still
bring
have to
pensions
fund-
up, that's the only reason
We still have
I'm
to
asking
match
about that.
whatever it is, so it's not, Christine, maybe you can explain that better.
we are still going to have to
It's
match it. So if the
18%
market
less.
goes down, we're still going to have to. Yeah, I mean, it sounds good in theory, and maybe it's a step in
It's
the
a
right
start.
direction, but it's going to take a long time. And I know Christina said, with the choices that everybody has, it's going to be a nightmare for our finance staff to monitor, and our HR to control all that. It's going to be.
It's
I mean,
like trying to
looks
drain
good
a
on It
pool-
looks good on paper.
Trying to
Question
drain a
is-
pool with a teaspoon.
Yeah.
Just so I understand, like with the new changes, for example, a new teacher that starts under the new program, if he or she retires in 35 years, do they then, unlike the current system, I mean, you know what you're going to get based on your salary. Is then the new plan that they have no idea what their pension is? Or is it just, they're still guaranteed a certain amount
Yes,
down the road, it's just the way it's funded in between is a little different?
Half of it's guaranteed for life.
So half of the
As
pension.
opposed to
All of it. So it's not true.
It's
Mark.
a step in the right direction. So they are trying to make changes, but it's not just school district. This is all state.
Municipality,
Employees,
Well, and that's why they're not going to see changes. You're
To
asking the
vote
people
on
that
their own
benefit
retirement.
from
That's
it
been
to
the
change it,
issue.
and that's not going to
They
happen.
shouldn't be handled by the legislature, but it is, has to be.
All right, hopefully moving on to some more good news. Ms. Troutman.
I'll just share a couple more Wilson good news stories. The Wilson Technology Students Association had another successful day at their regional conference. This is the first level of competition for this group and the first chance for them to test their work against the work of their peers from across our region. And as a result of the conference, we qualified 18 students for the state conference, which is the exact same amount as last year, which is held at the Seven Springs Resort in April. We did share a full list of the overall results on the Bulldog Blitz, so you can read the full list of all the students that participated and how they did. Also, we want to congratulate our JROTC, which competed in the Region 3 drill competition, and they took third place overall. So again, they've done a great job. And finally, Wilson West Middle School had a team that won the Math Counts County competition, and they're going to be heading to states in March. So we're super proud of them as well. Just a couple items under PR. Recently, Mr. Hopp, myself, and some other Wilson School District administrators and teachers visited Whitfield Elementary School for a presentation by Keystone Pet Enhanced Therapy Services about how therapy dogs can help with literacy issues and student anxiety. In October, Wilson High School students in Reading Strategies 11 initiated a project to mentor some of the third grade students at Whitfield who struggle with reading comprehension. And this event, just a couple weeks ago, was a follow-up to that initial visit, but this time the students were able to read out loud with their high school mentor to one of the therapy dogs. So they had therapy dogs come in, and the students were able to read to them. And it was a really great day for the students, and a great follow-up to what we did in the fall with them. And then finally, we are excited to announce that the Wilson School District was recently ranked 39th out of 498 schools in Pennsylvania and 430th out of 11,861 school districts in the nation on the niche 2019 Best School Districts in America list. So our ranking is based on rigorous analysis of key statistics and reviews from students and parents using data from the U.S. Department of Education. Ranking factors include things such as state test scores, college readiness, graduation rates, SAT, ACT scores, teacher quality, public school district ratings, and more. So we certainly want to congratulate our entire Wilson community who works hard to achieve this honor. Our ranking last year in the state was 50, so we've gone up. So that's great news.
Great.
Just to follow up on the Keystone Pet Enhanced Therapy. Again, I would really, there's two type of therapy uses when it comes to, for these dogs, when it comes to reading. or just general student interaction is you have a facility dog that is actually, the school district owns it, but there's a teacher or administrator at a building that takes care of it, and that dog under certain protocols, you know, that he or she gets a certain amount of rest, is at the building all day. Another is K-Pets, is a program that there's volunteers throughout the mid-state that bring their dogs, their therapy dogs in, and it's an excellent program. And I'd highly recommend that we start, dip our toe in the water in this a little bit, and maybe, you know, reach out to K-Pets starting at our elementary level, because I really see some excitement with these kids, especially at the younger level. You know, they're sitting there reading to a dog. I mean, who can't enjoy when there was a French bulldog, you know, with the one with the big ears, and then it's just like standing there, like staring at you, like with his tongue hanging out, smiling the whole time, and you know, who could not enjoy reading to that dog? So I think the kids would really enjoy it, and it's something that to continue the reading experience, especially at the younger age.
Very good, thank you. Ed Foundation, Mr. Case.
The Ed Foundation met on February 8th, and it was a great meeting. It started off with the honors internship presentation by Dan Sukanik, who's one of the teachers that runs the program. It's a phenomenal program, and what's great about the WEF is that, you know, the community members and the business leaders that are part of that group really are helping to try and build that program and gain traction within the community to get more internships for the program. But we learned from Parker Leonard about his internship, and also Courtney Westman. So they talked about their internships, and just some highlights about at least Parker's with Quest Diagnostics. He's doing a bunch of things at the airport at Reading, and he's actually practically flying planes. I probably shouldn't say that in public, but you know, he's doing some wonderful things about loading planes and with Quest and all the things that happen with Quest Diagnostics. But they had to get the materials to certain places very quickly. So he's hanging out with a lot of different people within the airline at the Reading Airport and stuff, and he's actually getting in planes and helping fly sometimes too. So
I heard you in Kansas City.
yeah. It's a really cool program. But anyway, so with the honors program here at West, a lot of schools are starting to do it. So we want to try and stay on the cutting edge of getting those internships, because there's only so many internships at businesses. So if you know of any business owners or people that have an interest of having interns, put the word out to Dan Sukanik. So great program, and again, these seniors, they're working and getting all their schoolwork done, and then going out and sometime in the afternoon and doing their internships. So with that, also then the big event for the WF coming up is the chef competition, the Iron Chef, which is a benefit auction and a great program. That's Sunday, March 24th from 1 to 5 p.m. And tickets are actually now on sale. I said last time they were, but there's a little bit of a delay. So they actually are on sale. There's flyers that are coming out. You can learn about more information about the Iron Chef online. So if you want to be a sponsor, there's all sorts of donations that you can send out, or you could also be a sponsor. Sponsorship deadline is Friday, March 8th. So if you want to be a sponsor, please do so before then. The next meeting, there are a couple things for the calendar for meetings and events. WF board meeting there's one on March 29th, and then the Wilson Community Night at the Fightin' Phils is Friday, May 31st. So keep that on your calendars if you want to see a good baseball game and help out the WEF. That's it.
Thank you very much. Technology, Mrs. Cocker.
We've not had any committee meetings since last board meeting. We do not have one next month. However, there's something in the works, hopefully, that we'll be able to report on next month as a combination between technology and food services that we're hopefully going to, just a little teaser there. Hopefully next time we'll be able to roll out. So I don't want to say anything just in case it doesn't pan out. But no, so next meeting, listen for something exciting.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Russo.
Well, as already been touched on by many of you, Wilson students have made great use of their last long weekend before we embark on 7 full weeks of school. I know it's pretty impossible to think about 5-day weeks, but we'll have 7 in a row. So before this meeting I was fingers crossed for a snow day, but I don't know now. So, but as Ms. Troutman already talked about, over 20 Wilson students traveled to Conestoga Valley Middle School to take part in an annual TSA regional competition. Most people mistake this for traffic safety administration, but we're not making airport security out of our students. They're actually engaging in the Technology Students Association. Just to add to what Ms. Troutman has said, they prepared projects for the past several months in various aspects, or in various fields that you may not know relate back to technology. So some students were working in fashion design, others were working in video production, logo design, photography, even presenting speeches. There were several first places taken. I think I have them listed up here, and there's even a few more, I think. But I think 18 was listed. We'll be moving on to the state round, and years past we've had several move on to the national round. And this is just a great opportunity because all these projects are making something tangible, whether they're literally designing clothes or making short horror films or something like that. It's an opportunity not only to compete, but to literally make something out of their technology education. Like Mr. Wolf has mentioned, this past weekend, the Roy G. Snyder Natatorium hosted the Berks County swim meet, yearly swim meet, Central Penn League, and both the Wilson boys and girls took the CPL championship titles, both with undefeated seasons. I'm biased, of course, because that is my team, but more than half of both of these varsity teams will be moving on to the district championships at Cumberland Valley 2 weekends from now, as well as our divers. So it's just amazing to see how many kids, how dominant we are in so many winter sports, to see them moving on to the next level. Just an update on the club that I run, Student Government. We're currently organizing a $500 scholarship to be offered to any graduating senior that plans to further their education at a college, university, or vocational institute. We're searching for a student that's passionate about their community and staying involved. I don't think anyone in this room can apply, but you may know someone that is able to. And yeah, so it's unique to see kids helping other kids through a scholarship like this. Often scholarships can be coming from anywhere, so we really want to get something like this started. In order to fund this, we actually came up with a new type of raffle. We had talked to Ms. Troutman about, is it legal, because we're kind of gambling, but we're raffling off 3 front row parking spots. So, you know, that walk from the back of the parking lot can be unbearable. I think we've seen it at basketball games, but now kids will have the chance to hopefully stay in the front for the rest of the school year. And this is my ultimate plug of the night, something we plan all year for, but this Saturday, February 23rd, also my birthday, by the way, is Wilson Minithon's 7th annual 12-hour dance marathon. This dance marathon engages hundreds of high school students, middle school students, and community members, and it's open to the public from 6 to 9 p.m. on that Saturday evening. Admission varies for children, seniors, and adults, but once you come in, there'll be food, games, carnival games, tons of raffles from all local businesses, and it's a great event, and we've seen the money raised come back to kids in our community, so come out for a night of fundraising and dancing. So thank you.
Great job. You guys shooting for that 10 million to match that 10 million?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Very good. Mr. Maravich, anything additionally? Okay. Any other business from the board? I see we're up 5 students since last month. All right. Nothing else. We're looking for a motion for adjournment. Mr. Hopp, thank you. We're adjourned.